Hello everyone, my name is Olivia and welcome to Australia Live by Armenia TV, a program by Armenian Media Inc. A few days ago, we recognised the International Day of the World's Indigenous Peoples. So before we begin, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which I host this panel discussion today. As people who know the value of the rights of Indigenous people to live freely on their land, we stand with those Indigenous to this land. I would also like to pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Today I'm joined by a panel of representatives from Armenian National Committee branches around the world. They will be discussing a few issues that are currently highly prevalent to Armenians worldwide. I thank you all for joining me this evening and want to note that it is symbolic that the leaders of the ANC officers are gathered today, the day after the 100th anniversary of the signing of the Treaty of Sevag. The result of the treaty really does guide a large portion of the work that ANCs do around the world. On our panel today, we have Haig Kayserian from the Armenian National Committee of Australia, Vera Yacoubian from the Armenian National Committee of the Middle East, Aram Hamparian from the Armenian National Committee of America, Sevag Belian from the Armenian National Committee of Canada, and Kaspar Karampetian from the European Armenian Federation of Justice and Democracy. If any of you viewing this discussion have any questions for our panel, please comment them under the video using the link www.facebook.com/ArmeniaOnline/live, and then I'll check through and pick a few to ask our panelists. Also, if any of you panelists have questions for each other, please feel free to jump in. So that we can put a face to the name, I'll ask each of you to introduce yourselves by briefly telling our viewers the last thing that you were working on before joining this discussion. Haig, would you like to start?
Sure. Thank you very much, Olivia. Thanks to Armenian Media. Thanks to my fellow panelists. I am very happy during these tough times that everybody's been able to join this discussion. We miss all of you. By now, we would have probably met in Armenia or at some regional meeting or something like that. So it's really refreshing to be able to do this virtually. The last thing that I was working on was something to do with the COVID campaign that we ran for Armenia. Our community together to try to raise some funds to buy some medical supplies for Armenia, and we were dealing with the Armenian Health Ministry in understanding what it is that they need right now, and also a group of doctors here in Australia to try to ensure that procurement so that there's a timely arrival of some important equipment that's going to hopefully help save lives in Armenia.
Kaspar, would you like to tell us what you were up to?
Yes, good morning to everyone. I want just to clarify that the European Armenian Federation for Justice and Democracy is the Hohita Haita Di Evropae Hansnachum in Armenian, as are all the others. Just our name is different for some obvious reasons that we could not use in Europe for all Europe, the ANC brand name. As Haig said, we are working now also on the COVID-19. At this moment, we are in relations with the Belgian government. I have spoken with the Deputy Prime Minister of Belgium and the Minister of Foreign Affairs. We are trying to organize a delegation to Armenia with doctors and first aid help that they need. Armenia has given us the list. Of course, now we are working, also started working with the European Commission and the European Parliament in order to try to find a way that aid that will be sent to Lebanon, the humanitarian aid, if we can find a way that part of it goes to Armenians or the Christians who don't know yet. We are working on it because we are afraid that maybe if around 20% of the 25% of the damages that are on Armenian sides. We are not sure that we'll have from all those aids enough product goods. And the third just today occurred. It's from Aleppo. They have also a terrible problem there with COVID. Hungarians are dying. They don't have anything. Just ask me to see how we can help. So I started now looking also for Aleppo. This is what we are doing today. And hopefully we'll see what we can do, but because in Europe now it's all vacation time and it's not easy to find people.
Mhm. Aram, you are currently in DC, is it, from the Armenian National Committee of America? I know your day just started, it's the morning, but as we know, advocacy never sleeps, so I'm sure something's already come across your desk today.
Sure. I think Lebanon has been front and center for the past few days, of course, given the urgency of the situation. But what I was working on right before this call was the Artsakh aid program, which is under attack in the US. We were able to get one of our two houses of our legislature, the US, to approve the continuation of that humanitarian aid program, primarily for demining, getting rid of landmines and teaching kids not to get blown up by explosives that are strewn across the landscape. But now we're working on the Senate. We're trying to get the US Senate to match that assistance program, and then so we can send off to the White House a foreign aid bill that preserves this humanitarian aid program. So it's been a real arm wrestling match, but I think we're making progress.
That's great. And Sevag, currently in Montreal from the Armenian National Committee of Canada, also mourning for you.
Yeah, yes, it is. First of all, thank you, Olivia, and thank you to the Armenian media of Australia for this great opportunity. It is the morning, but as you mentioned, Haitat never sleeps, so we work around the clock. And again, as Aram mentioned, the issue in Lebanon has been front and center for the past week. We've been putting all our efforts into that, and I was just sending some commentary to one of our contacts in government regarding an announcement that was made yesterday by Canada's Prime Minister for an additional $25 million of humanitarian funding that the Canadian government will be providing for relief in Lebanon. So that's something that we're working on around the clock, as I said. And of course, yesterday with centennial of the Treaty of Sevres, we put out a number of letters and we issued a press release. So there are follow-ups that need to be done for that. So generally, that's what I've been focusing on this morning, and I will be for the rest of the day.
That's great. Now, before I go to Vera, we can all imagine what has been keeping you busy, heading the ANC of the Middle East from Lebanon. Now, Vera, I've seen the pictures of your office in Beirut, and I'm glad that you're safe. I'm sure our audience would really appreciate an update from the ground.
All right. As you know, first, before I start the update, so today it was the first day that I visited the destroyed, let's say, some areas in the capital of Beirut. Especially, I passed through Noor Hajan, Khalil Badawi, and where and Mar Mikhail. It was the first time that I go there to see the huge destruction that happened. And it was really, really, how I say it was really nice to see all these young boys and girls working together, helping the displaced, let's say, or those who lost their homes, cleaning their houses and cleaning the streets. So this is the first time that I go there and see with my own eyes how these young people from different parts of Lebanon, they came to help the people who lost their houses. To start with, I would like to do a briefing about what happened on August 4. On the afternoon of August 4, 2 explosions occurred at the port of Beirut. The extremely powerful second explosion resulted in at least 220 deaths up till today, 7,000 injuries, many are still missing, and about 10 to 15 billion US dollars property damage. and has made an estimated 300,000 people homeless, actually. The explosion was linked to 2,750 tons of ammonium nitrate and was felt in Turkey, Syria, Palestine, and Cyprus, and was regarded as having been among the most powerful let's say, nuclear explosions in history. The Lebanese government declared a two-week state of emergency in response to the disaster. After the blast, protests erupted, as I'm sure you all know and followed on TV, erupted across Lebanon against Lebanese government for their failure to prevent the explosions, joining, of course, a large series of protests that have been taking place in the country since 2019. Yesterday, the Lebanese cabinet resigned due to the mounting political pressure that was intensified by the explosions. Many countries pledged to help, to provide millions to aid the affected people by providing humanitarian aid only. The economy of Lebanon was already in a state of crisis prior to the explosion. In addition, we had the COVID-19 pandemic, which had overwhelmed many of the country's hospitals, several of which already were short of medical supplies and unable to pay off due to a financial crisis. As a result, there was a widespread destruction, much of Beirut downtown especially, and the surrounding areas were tormented with damaged houses, scattered glasses, damaged shops and cars, and hospitals. The heavily Armenian areas, let's say, populated areas like Ashrafiye and Mar Mikhail, Khalil Badawi, and Nur Hajan were a scene of widespread destructions. These four Armenian districts suffered heavy damages, with some buildings having all their windows shattered and other buildings completely destroyed. Burj Hamud suffered also damages. Many houses were totally or partially damaged. Also shops, many community centers and churches. The number of Armenian, let's say, deaths have been estimated at 13 up till today, with at least 250 injuries. The Armenian Catholic State of Cilicia was also badly damaged. The ARF Shavzoyan Center in Burj Hamud, where my office is located, which houses also the editorial of Astag newspaper, the Radio One station, the Hamaskaim publishing house, and the ANC offices of Beirut and the Middle East were damaged. Thanks God, there were no injuries and casualties. Coming to the what kind of aid is reaching Lebanon? Of course, we have humanitarian aid from all parts of the world, from east and west, from European and Arab countries, but these are only humanitarian aids. All right. Also, the Armenian government was mobilized to provide emergency humanitarian assistance to Lebanon. Less than a day after the massive explosion happened, Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan had a telephone call with our president, Lebanese President Michel Aoun, on Wednesday to offer condolences to the families and the victims and to discuss the scope of assistance needed to the Lebanese. President Armen Sarkisian also has been in contact with the Catholicos Aram I in order to assess the situation and determine how to provide assistance to the country's substantial and influential Armenian community. Artsakh's president, Arayik Harutyunyan, also spoke with Aram I and said Artsakh is ready to receive 150 Lebanese Armenian families if they like to move. High Commissioner of Diaspora Affairs, Zare Sinanian, was here yesterday, was visiting Lebanon, met with the Armenian community leaders to assess the situation and determine a course of action to assist the city's seizable Armenian population. So it's been a week now since the explosion. The Armenian leaders are meeting on a daily basis to assess the damages and try to find solutions. The Armenian youth are everywhere to help those in need in removing and cleaning the traces of the explosion. The community's most urgent needs today include medication for chronically ill patients, food, financial aid for rebuilding homes, shops, schools, churches, and community centers.
Thank you, Vera. That was a very in-depth explanation on what's been happening before, and I'm sure everyone's really glad to be hearing it from someone that's on the ground there. Now, the ANC officers really snapped into action after the explosion, and I'd like if you could all give an update on what activities you've been working on to support Lebanon in the past few days. Aram, would you like to start?
We cannot hear Aram.
Okay, sorry about that. In terms of our American response, I think the ANCA's push falls into two basic categories. The first is to see as robust an aid package as possible, and that's obviously to meet immediate needs, but more importantly, I think the rebuilding needs, the development needs that will come from this terrible crisis. So the first is the scale or the scope of the aid package. Second is that aid package reach vulnerable populations, that it actually get into the hands of people who need it. And that doesn't mean obviously just Armenians, it means every at-risk population, but there shouldn't be gaps and there shouldn't be communities that slip through the cracks or remain outside of the stream of US assistance. I can point to obviously a very different situation in Syria, where we had a lot of US assistance, but not as much of it reached at-risk communities as was needed. And I think Armenians remained largely outside of the flow of international assistance, or certainly Western or US assistance into Syria. We don't want to see that repeated here. We want to see the assistance reach all the people of Lebanon, everyone who needs the aid. And Armenians should not fall into the gaps. I think that's our very, very serious concern here, that the Armenians should be at the table. The Armenian Relief Society and other institutions that are doing work in this area need to be at the table, sitting with our US partners, making sure that that the aid reaches everyone who needs assistance. I think that's what we're talking to the State Department about today and later this week.
Thank you, Aram. Kaspar?
Yes, we had a video about the situation in Beirut prepared by Dilanchian, who is member of the ANC of Beirut. And we have posted it immediately the same day now on our Facebook page, and it has too many reaches and likes. Secondly, we sent letters to rich Armenians in Europe, asking them and telling them that now it's the time to prove that someone, if feels that is Armenian, should help our community in Lebanon. We just sent it yesterday. We don't have yet any responses, but we will follow it up. Next Monday, I will have a conference call with two key assistants of European Commission on crisis management. And there I will try to discuss what I said at the beginning, to find out how we can find a way to have aid to go to the Armenian community also, because it's clear that European Union will send help, will give a big amount to rebuild Lebanon. But we are not sure what amount of it will go to Armenian sector. So that's what I was asked also from Bureau, Tashnakusian Bureau, to look at about how we can do it. It's not easy, but anyhow, we'll try to find a way. Our situation is particular with the European Armenian Federation of Yevrobay Haitat, because we are not in a country. We do not have a country. We have 14 Haitats in Europe, so we have to work with them. They have to do the work in their countries. We just can do whatever is possible with European Union. From the very beginning, we had contacts with all our Haitat committees in Europe, and we asked them to do the utmost they can. I know that in many countries already they have started fundraising for the Armenian community, to help the Armenian community in Lebanon, and we'll continue on this way.
Raising awareness really is one of the most important things. especially since you're very confident that the European Union will be providing aid, and hopefully they will be able to provide that aid to the Armenian populated areas of Beirut as well. Haig, would you like to give us an update on Australia, please?
Yeah, there's obviously a lot of similarities in what we've been able to do, you know, in terms of assisting our brothers and sisters in Beirut. There's a few different angles that we need to take with this, and one of those angles is actually helping the significant number of Lebanese Armenian origin Australians. So those who are living here in Australia but originally from Lebanon. We have to make sure that their efforts to contact their families and make sure their families are okay is adequately received and achieved, because obviously there was an outpouring of concern that occurred in the beginning. There are some Australian citizens who are of Armenian origin that are currently in Lebanon. They've been waiting for a very long time for flights out of Lebanon because of COVID. So their stay in Lebanon has been extended and extended and extended. So we've been in contact with Home Affairs here in Australia about ways to expedite their return home to Australia. That's about the community over here. The rest of our focus, which is the majority, has obviously been on the community in Lebanon, which has very unequivocally declared that they are there to rebuild. And it's very important for us to heed those calls and focus very much on how we can help them rebuild. So Australia has already announced an initial aid package of $2 million, which we believe is too small, but that, because of budgetary protocols, they can take from a discretionary budget at the moment. And the idea, I think, is to provide a lot more assistance to Lebanon, and we will do what our colleagues are doing around the world without repeating what they said, and try to help ensure that that reaches our communities as well as everywhere else. However, the reality is anybody in the Haitad movement knows that if we're going to look after Armenians in any part of the world, whether that is in Armenia or the diaspora, the best people we have to rely on is ourselves. And it's very important that us as Armenians around the world dig very, very deep into our pockets, nowhere else is necessary right now, and ensure that the aid reaches those that are currently in need, which are our brothers and sisters in Lebanon. I'm very proud that our community was very quick to announce a pan-Armenian fundraising drive, which has now, I think it raised about $24,000 in the first 24 hours, and it's now at over 35 and going strong. There's a strong outpouring of support, and we encourage that to continue. We encourage people who haven't donated to donate, and we encourage those who have donated to donate again if they can. The most important thing right now is to help the people of Lebanon, and the Armenians of Lebanon will definitely receive assistance when it's coming from Armenians around the world. So that fundraiser and fundraising efforts around the world, I think, are very, very important. Like my colleagues mentioned earlier, we will be putting a lot of energy and effort into that. I will also say that we're building coalitions, because we believe that when it comes to aid packages or bringing our citizens back, etc., we will need coalitions. We do have a decent number of Armenians in Australia, but there are also a vast number of Lebanese Australians, and they also have their churches. There's a significant Maronite community, for example, in Sydney and Melbourne, and there's a very significant organization that represents Lebanese Muslims. We have already reached out to them, and we have told them that we are there for Lebanon, and we're there to help everybody from Lebanon. But of course, if there's anything to be done when it comes to lobbying our government or otherwise, we will be willing to do that activity together, and that those conversations have already started. So the coalition building has begun.
Mm-hmm. So that fundraiser is called Butt Cheeks for Beirut. If anyone in Australia would still like to donate, you can find it on Facebook and donate that way. Haig, and as Haig said, the money will be going directly to the Armenians that have been affected in Beirut at the moment. Sevag, would you like to tell us what ANC Canada has been up to?
Yes, thank you, Olivia. And first of all, I would like to start off by offering our condolences on behalf of ANC Canada to Vera, our colleagues in Lebanon, and all of our Lebanese Armenian compatriots and the Lebanese people, the brotherly Lebanese people. When the explosion happened last Tuesday, right away, we rolled up our sleeves, just like all our colleagues around the world, and we got to work. And the first thing we did was we contacted the Canadian government, different departments, and directly the executive, so the Prime Minister's office, and the Foreign Affairs Minister, the Minister of International Development. And we weighed in with our government and legislators to say that an expedited aid package is the most important thing right now for Lebanon. But it's important to mention, but that by the time we did that, the government had already announced that they are willing and actively discussing providing aid to Lebanon. So we basically called on government to expedite the process, and we were very happy to see that they did. On Wednesday, nearly 24 hours after the explosion, the government announced an initial commitment of up to $5 million, which we welcomed, of which 1.5 million was to be transferred right away to the Lebanese Red Cross. Of course, we've been working with our legislators directly as well, mainly with members of parliament that are involved in the Canada-Lebanon Parliamentary Friendship Group, the chair of the group, which is a very close friend and peer of ours. And just like most of our colleagues, we're asking them to ensure that alongside the entire Lebanese population, the Armenian community also gets a part of that aid, the urgently needed humanitarian assistance and funds to rebuild the community. So we've been following up on that actively, and we were very happy to hear or learn that last night Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced an additional $25 million of aid, and additional to that as well, the Canadian government is now committing to more longer term and helping on the longer term for institutional reforms in Lebanon and to help rebuild the country. So I think there is still a lot of work that needs to be done on this front. It's not even close to being wrapped up. So we look forward to working with different stakeholders to make sure that this is a success. But we're very happy to see that the Canadian government, has really stepped up on this important matter. On the community side, you might have seen that only recently, like a couple of weeks ago, the Armenian Canadian community wrapped up a very successful fundraising campaign for Lebanon prior to the explosion, and nearly $250,000 was raised. But right after the explosion, there's a renewed fundraising effort, and that has been ongoing as well. I'd like to second what Haig said, that really we have to, at the end of the day, we have to rely on our efforts to ensure that our community in Lebanon remains robust, dynamic, and as strong as ever.
That's absolutely amazing. The numbers coming from the community in Canada and from the Canadian government themselves. Thank you, Sevag. And Vera, before we wrap this topic up, do you have any final messages that you'd like to say to the global Armenian communities?
Yes, I would like first to thank our friends who are really working hard, and this is encouraging. What I want to say is Lebanon now is in a very, very bad situation, not because only of the explosion. Prior to the explosion, we were facing a very, very hard economic situation, inflation and etc. So we really need support. And I'm saying this with really pain, because Lebanon has been always there to help all the Armenian communities was always there to help Armenia and Artsakh, even in the when Lebanon was in really bad conditions or situations. Now it seems that it's their turn to help and support Lebanon, because Lebanon is and will remain the heart of Armenian diaspora, and it's the only community, or it's one of the few communities that still speak Armenian, that still prepare Armenian teachers, that still prepare editors and send them around the world. You see, so Lebanon should stay strong so that the Armenian diaspora would stay strong. Thank you for all the efforts done. It's really encouraging. Thank you, friends and girls. This will really help the Armenian community of Lebanon to stand on its feet again, hopefully.
Thank you, Vera.
If you allow me, it's really a pity what is happening with Lebanon. I have a personal experience of Lebanon. I was in Hamparian, the Aram for 6 years during the 1960s, and it was a fantastic country. It was called the Monte Carlo of Middle East. And unfortunately now, Lebanon is in this very bad situation, and really it's very pity.
Yeah.
Can I also just ask a question?
But we will recover. We will recover, girls. Sorry.
Yes.
I just have a question, Vera, if you may touch on, and I know this isn't necessarily on the topic of the explosion and the post-explosion, and what we've spoken about, I stress, is the most important information. I'm really, really thankful that this sort of an update has been able to be provided and to be provided so eloquently in the English language by you. So thank you, Vera. I think the diaspora will whoever hadn't quite understood the trouble that everybody was in, they now do. My question to you is relating to a phenomenon that seemed to definitely interest Saitad around the world, ANCs around the world, and that was this sort of neo-Ottoman rise that we saw on the streets of Lebanon recently. I didn't quite understand what was going on. I mean, I'm about 13,000 kilometers away from you. Maybe that's why. But do you want to touch on that and explain what we saw? I mean, the footage that I saw, just so I sort of picture it for our viewers, there were marches that were going on, anti-Armenian marches with Turkish flags on the streets of Beirut. Probably last month. Can you give us a little bit of background about that and whether we should be concerned?
All right. Do you want me to talk about this, Olivia, now, or I leave it for maybe later when we talk about the challenges that we face in the Middle East and in the region? If you like, I can answer it now, but if you want to, we can leave it for later, where I will speak about the challenges that we are facing in Lebanon and in the Middle East because of this Turkish influence in the region. So, Olivia, you decide. Do you want me to answer the question, or just leave it later to later? I don't know, explanation.
No, I think you can answer it now if you'd like, so we stay on the topic of Lebanon and everyone still has it fresh in their minds.
All right. So, Haig, you know, we have a small Turkish community in Lebanon. And the Turkish community in Lebanon currently numbers about 80,000, let's say, people. In addition, there is about 120,000 and 150 Syrian Turkmen refugees, part of the Syrian refugee population in Lebanon, living in the country as a result of the Syrian war, civil war. Turkey provides this community and was providing this community since, I think, 10 or 12 years with all kinds of economic, social and educational aid. Lately, they declared that even they would give citizenship to each Lebanese of Turkish origin, what does this mean if not Turkey is trying to bring back the glories of the Ottoman Empire? And not only that, and challenging the Armenian communities, not only in Lebanon, but also in the Middle East. So on June 11, a demonstration was staged in Beirut in Beirut's Muslim quarter, actually, with slogans directed to or against Armenians, accompanied by the waving of the Turkish and Lebanese flags. The social media was encouraging anti-Armenian sentiments. This was a surprise, actually, outburst against the Armenians. Turkey's Ottomanist ambitions are not the creation of course, Armenian paranoia, but they represent a real plan and threat to its neighbors. So all these issues actually are challenges facing the Armenian community in the Middle East, especially with Turkey trying to, or with the Turkish invasion, the Turkish interference in Syria, Libya, and other countries of the Middle East. Now it's the chance for Turkey to enter Lebanon and offer humanitarian aid. In the meantime, not only offering humanitarian aid, but also helping this community to stand on its feet and be there, let's say, how do we call it? The reserve, keeping as a reserve to exploit it anytime they want. Did I answer the question? Haig?
Yes.
Was it enough?
Absolutely. Thank you, Vera.
Okay.
No, thank you, Vera. With everything that happened in Armenia and with Lebanon lately, it's funny to think that was only a month ago or so. But thank you. Your resilience is unmatched, Vera. So thank you for taking us through all of that. So everyone should be incredibly proud of the work that all the chapters have done and the money that's been raised so far. Thank you to everyone.
Yes.
Now, shortly before the explosion in Lebanon, we were actually dealing with the conflict between Armenia and Azerbaijan. Now, as a brief recap for all the viewers, on the 12th of July, the Azeri armed forces actually launched an attack on Armenia's sovereign borders. The attacks were targeted at Tavush, near civilian populated areas, and although luckily there were no civilian casualties, unfortunately 5 members of the Armenian armed force were sadly killed while they were defending the border. During the 10 or so days that the fighting ensued, Azerbaijan's dictatorship actually managed to make a threat to bomb Armenia's Metsamor nuclear power plant. My question is, how have your officers mobilized to support Armenia during the attacks? Haig, would you like to start?
Sure. Look, I think the attack from Azerbaijan needs to be, first of all, condemned by everybody, and first of all by everybody in the Armenian world. There's no ambiguity out there that the side that doesn't want gunfire locator systems placed on the border between Armenia, Artsakh, and Azerbaijan is very likely the side that is the aggressor in these situations. And if there is a genuine accusation by Azerbaijan that Armenia might be the aggressor in this or any other situation, well, bring on the gunfire locator systems and let's have the argument. But the fact that they don't want that technology means that they forfeit the right of calling anybody else out when it comes to this sort of aggression. So with that said, it was very important for us to make this case to the Australian Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade, which is the ministry that deals with these sorts of matters, and call for a condemnation from the Australian government. At the same time, recognizing that the Australian government has failed to properly understand what's going on over there, I think, to be kind. And if I wasn't going to be kind, is ignoring what's really going on over there in favor of some sort of, false diplomacy that it's playing with a dictatorship in that part of the world. What we also did was approach our friends in Parliament and wanted them to take action and condemn Azerbaijan's attacks. One of the issues that we also faced was that Parliament is not really sitting conventionally during COVID times, but we were very thankful that some very high-profile Australian parliamentarians took to social media to condemn Azerbaijan for those attacks, and also declare their solidarity with Armenia during this time. What it did do was it balanced the coverage a little bit. And I think that our communities generally, globally, did a much better job on social media particularly the Twitter sphere, which is the domain of sort of despotic leaders around the world. I'm not looking at anybody. I'm just sort of bringing out a point that it is a forum that if you don't mobilize your grassroots, you're never going to be able to stand up to, you know, the sort of the fakes and the farms that are created to take this issue on for, you know, the Azerbaijani dictatorship. But our communities, I think, did a lot better. And as well as these politicians in Australia and other places, of course, the coverage was balanced somewhat, and people have started to realize that this guy, you know, Aliyev, is not necessarily up to any good. You know, he calls elections before anybody is voted. He appoints his wife as his vice president, and, you know, we can sort of, you know, he's proven to bribe politicians and put ANC people on Interpol watch lists. I mean, we're dealing with a person here that we need to make sure that the Western world, who claims to be the upholders of democracy, condemns. And I'm very happy that our political leaders in Australia, if not the government itself, has already condemned those attacks. When the Medzamor nuclear threat happened, Aliyev actually graduated to the class of nuclear terrorist. And it was very important for the Australian government, and also I'm sure my colleagues are going to talk about other governments, to understand that while, you know, there might be some, you know, false narrative that excuses Azerbaijan of condemnation at the, you know, during border skirmishes and attacks on Artsakh. First of all, it shouldn't excuse it when it comes to Armenia, and it absolutely shouldn't excuse it when it comes to nuclear threats. We're not living in that world anymore where nuclear threats are a thing that can just be glossed over and passed over. So we have made another appeal to the Australian government. We haven't received a response to that yet, which is quite promising, interestingly. We're grasping at straws a little bit with these guys, I admit that. But the fact that they're obviously considering a response is something that sort of shows that this isn't a black and white issue. It was a representative of the Aliyev government that threatened to bomb a nuclear power plant in a civilian area of Armenia. So we'll see how that pans out. At state level, we also had a lot of representations made on our behalf, and Armenia's behalf, I should say. And Hugh McDermott, one of our good friends in Parliament who visited Artsakh last year as well, he actually introduced a motion to the New South Wales State Parliament, which is the largest state in Australia, headed by Premier Gladys Berejiklian. He introduced a motion that was not just condemning Azerbaijan's attacks and the nuclear threat, etc. He was also condemning the ideology of pan-Turkism. And I thought that that was very important, because if you want to link the Armenian genocide to what's going on in Artsakh or Armenia today, you don't have to look very far. It is one ideology, and it is the same ideology that that Vera is cautious of as well in her comments earlier. So I think that that motion will be voted on soon enough when Parliament resumes. So I'm really happy that Hugh was able to do that for us.
Thanks, Haig. We can always count on Hugh to be on our side, trooper. Kaspar, would you like to let us know what the Armenian national committees in Europe have been working on?
Yes, although it was a very difficult situation for us with the COVID-19, practically our office was somehow far away from being there. I am in Athens, still I am in Athens. I could not go back to Belgium. Harud was blocked in France. So it was the lockdown in Brussels. So it was very difficult. We could not find members of parliament. They were not coming to Belgium. Even the European Parliament was having sessions on internet meetings. But anyhow, we managed from the very beginning to have a number of declaration statements from members of the European Parliament condemning Azerbaijan. We have 29 members of the European Parliament from 7 different political parties who wrote a letter to Josep Borrell, let's say, he's a vice president, high representative, which he is practically the foreign affairs minister of European Union, asking him to condemn Azerbaijan and ask Azerbaijan not to continue his attacks on Armenia. In the same time, we sent letters, two letters, the first one just after the attack, and explaining about what Haig also said, those sensors that can find out who shot first, which OSCE Minsk group in 2013 asked the two parties to have it. Armenia is accepting it, and still Azerbaijan is not. So this is a very important fact to point out, and this one really has influence on political people to whom we mentioned this thing. And then the second letter was about Medzamor, which made much more interest for the Europeans, and not only from the European Parliament, but from the different countries of Europe. And we had responses to Azerbaijan's statements that they will attack Medzamor. In Belgium, two friendship groups with Artsakh. You know, Belgium is two parts, French-speaking and Flemish parts. So in both parts we have friendship groups with Artsakh, and around 20 members of the two groups also had a statement condemning Azerbaijan and backing Armenia. And at the same time, in different countries of Europe, our national committees had the opportunity to have MPs to make statements regarding the Armenia and Azerbaijan clash in Tavush. And even the foreign minister of Cyprus condemned Azerbaijan about its attacks. We had statements from the friendship group with Armenia of Greek parliament. We have the statement of Friends of Artsakh, the group of Friends of Artsakh in Cyprus. We had in Austria, we had in Germany, we had in Sweden, we had in France a quite large number of parliamentarians from all the political parties that condemned Azerbaijan. And it got clear that this time Azerbaijan could not convince anyone that Armenia was the one who attacked. And the social media also in Europe, most of the posts of analyzers, of critics, were against Azerbaijan. Let me see my note. I think that basically those were the cases, because it's not the first time that we deal with Azerbaijan in the European Union and the European Parliament. In 2016 also, we managed that during the special session, the plenary session in Strasbourg of the European Parliament, from the 25 speakers, 23 condemned Azerbaijan. So they know well. They know well, of course, the energy problem that Europe has and wants to find new places to have its gas and oil supply, plays a role. But now if you speak off the record with any European official, no one will condemn Armenia against Azerbaijan. Now they start also understanding the problem of Artsakh. Many people now are understanding the problem of Artsakh, and that's why we have in different countries friendship groups with Artsakh. Now have in 4 countries in Europe, and if we did not have the COVID, we're going to have around 2 or 3 new groups in Europe also. Now with the COVID, I don't know what we can do.
Thank you, Kaspar, for letting us know. Sevag, would you like to let us know what Canada has been up to?
Yes. So when the clashes first began, right away, typically when things do happen on the border, even if it's a small violation, which unfortunately happens very frequently. We reached out to Global Affairs Canada, that's the Department of Foreign Affairs here in Canada. And from the get-go, we started making the proper representations, providing them periodic updates of what was happening on the ground to keep them apprised and at the same time urge them to, first of all, be vigilant, monitor the situation, make representations on their end within the international community and directly to Azerbaijan, but most importantly, condemn what's happening, condemn Azerbaijan's blatant aggression against Armenia. And just like some of my colleagues mentioned, unfortunately, there are misunderstandings in Western governments, maybe not even, maybe in the Middle East as well. Vera can comment on that, but there are some misunderstandings as to, or in terms of the general dynamics for the Armenia-Azerbaijan overall, the clashes that happen, whether that's directed towards Armenia or towards Artsakh. But this case was different. It was directed towards Armenia, towards a sovereign nation, internationally recognized country. And I think citing diplomatic sensitivities, Western governments typically refrain from making properly dressed statements. And that's something that we have a lot of work to do on. They do realize that, and again, off the record, I'm sure they realize that it is not in the interest of Armenia to attack Azerbaijan. We all know currently domestically what is happening in Azerbaijan, and it's been a common practice by the Azerbaijani leadership to often divert attention to the border, suppress dissent and opposition within the country. So these are things that we believe that our government realizes. They see that, but because, again, citing diplomatic sensitivities, they typically refrain from making properly addressed statements. But we cannot accept that. We cannot say that, oh, okay, well, yes, there are diplomatic sensitivities, so we understand your position. That's not something we can do. That's not something we should allow ourselves to do. And as Haig was mentioning, first and foremost, we have to condemn it as strong as we can, and convince our governments to realize what's happening. And although we welcomed the Minister of Foreign Affairs' statement that came out on July 15th, mentioning that there's only peaceful resolution to this conflict, and Canada is supportive of the OSCE Minsk Group core chairmanship, so on and so forth, but it failed to distinguish the aggressor from the victim, which many of times we've seen. By doing that, you're emboldening the aggressor to continue what they're doing because they realize that they will not be held accountable by the international community. And Canada is strongly positioned with its proud history of peacekeeping, peacemaking. Canada is strongly positioned today to advocate for peace within the South Caucasus, within that region, and at the same time advocate for the internationally operated monitoring mechanisms within the OSCE. And that's something, again, similar to other regions, we've been advocating for strongly before these clashes, but especially after these clashes, and we hope to make progress on that moving forward. In terms of the response that we received from parliamentarians on different levels, I have to say that in some cases they were unprecedented. We did get a number of government MPs to make properly addressed statements, condemn Azerbaijan's aggression. And at the same time, we got an unprecedented condemnation from the leader of the official opposition of Canada. So that's the leader of the second largest party in Parliament, that being the Conservative Party of Canada right now. We received an unprecedented statement condemning Azerbaijan and basically voicing the Conservative Party's full support to Armenia and Artsakh. So in terms of getting condemnations, statements of condemnation, there was overwhelming support, again, from the federal level, from the provincial level, and some municipal governments as well. But I think our key focus should be on working with the Department of Foreign Affairs to make sure that they have a full understanding of the situation, for them to be able to properly assess what's happening on the ground, have the necessary resources, because I think that's another challenge. Some countries don't have the necessary resources, or they have a lack of interest at the same time, and they don't have the resources for them to be able to make an informed decision on these issues. So there's a lot of work on that front, but again, with the community weighing in with the legislators, I think that really helps us to move the message forward and gain some mileage on the Artsakh issue. Another important factor here in Canada, again, similar to other regions, we have the Canada Artsakh Parliamentary Friendship Group that's headed by MP Rachel Harder. That group in it by itself, again, is very well positioned to make the proper representations in Parliament and raise awareness within political circles in Ottawa. So it's definitely, we haven't turned the chapter on that one. We're still actively working on that file, and we hope to make more substantial progress on that as well.
Thank you, Sevag. I think one of your points there really sets the tone for the whole situation. A crime unpunished is a crime encouraged. And I think from what I hear, until Azerbaijan is held accountable for everything they've been doing towards Artsakh, towards Armenia lately, there isn't any incentive for them to stop. So thank you for bringing that up, Sevag. I'll pass it on to Vera now.
Yes. So from day one of the attacks, we reached out to the Arab media to explain what was taking place on the borders between Armenia and Azerbaijan. We explained the Azeri aggressions toward Armenian civilians. We also explained the Turkish involvement in the attacks. Beside the Turkish involvement, there was the Israeli involvement in the attacks. So, and ANC Lebanon chapter sent several letters to European embassies in Lebanon, asking them to stop the aggression against the Armenians and condemning and asking them to condemn the attacks. Turkey, unfortunately, exploited the issue by giving it a religious character, provoking the Arab Islamic communities, which is very easy here in the Middle East, against Armenians, telling them that the Christian Armenians are killing Azeri Muslims. So, and as you all know, how the religious factor plays an important role in approaching every single political or economic or even social issue in the region. So our job was really difficult and is difficult in the region, because we have always to challenge the religious factor and gain enemies by challenging this. We gain enemies actually in the region, as I explained, as answering Haig's question, that how we have all these people provoking anti-Armenian sentiments in Lebanon. So the Turks are exploiting all these sentiments, all these feelings. The same thing happens with the Armenian genocide. We try to explain to our friends, Arab friends, this doesn't mean that we don't have Arab Muslim friends. We have, but we're talking about the majority of Arabs or Arab Islamic communities, where the religious factor really, really is an important factor. I have nothing to add because during that time we were in lockdowns and we were we were really in bad economic and social situations. But even if we were in better situations, the thing that prevent us to do more is actually the religious factors. And we always try not to gain. I always tell our friends, for example, please don't provoke anti-Armenian sentiments. Don't insult the people you're talking with, even if they are Turks and Azeris. So try to explain your issues peacefully. All right. And by the way, we don't have embassies of Azerbaijan in the region are not really active. It's not similar to other countries. So their role is played by the Turkish embassies. That's it.
Thank you, Vera. The religious agenda in your region really does.
It's very dangerous. Yeah.
But it's great that you're still working above that any way that you can. And Aram, if you wanted to end us off on this topic about how the ANCA has mobilized support during the time of these attacks.
Sure. Thank you, Olivia. The July 12th attack coincided with a very busy time in our legislative cycle. As it turns out, we were having our foreign aid debate, we were having our defense debates, and we were having our intelligence debates in Congress at exactly that moment. So we worked very quickly and very hard to make sure that each of those three large measures, the defense, intelligence, and foreign aid, included a response to Azerbaijan's attack. Obviously, Azerbaijan pushed back very hard, and it became, in a sense, a context or a proxy war, far removed from the actual battlefield, but a proxy war here in Washington. And we saw some good progress. On the foreign aid side, there was a months-long showdown on whether or not the House would approve aid to Artsakh, and Azerbaijan ramped up its aggression and its attacks on that aid program. But we saw the Spear-Cox Amendment go through in the foreign aid bill. We were very gratified by that. In the defense bill, Congressman Plone was able to get through a measure that holds Azerbaijan to account, that puts checks on the military aid that they receive from the U.S., in particular rights abuses committed by units of the Azerbaijani military that get U.S. funding. So that was another sort of progress against Azerbaijani aggression. And then third, got less attention, but also significant, is that the intelligence authorization bill encouraged the American intelligence community to keep its eyes and ears on the front line there, the line of contact between Artsakh and Azerbaijan, the international border between Azerbaijan and Armenia. And this speaks to the broader point, I think, that a lot of my colleagues have raised today, which is breaking this artificial parity. That's a strategic goal for our movement worldwide. The idea of ending this forced or false parity that equates everything that Azerbaijan and everything that Armenia does as just kind of equal and of one piece. That it's just a feud. It's dogs and cats. It's not a solvable problem, but rather one in which there's no right or wrong. We have to break that, and we are in the process of breaking that. It's a long process, it's a difficult process, but I think that globally we're moving down that road pretty aggressively, and that speaks to why we would so strongly support an intelligence measure that says, look, let's have the full resources of the American intelligence community studying who starts the aggression. We're absolutely unafraid of that. We don't worry about that at all. We think that it's Azerbaijan initiating the aggression, and there's a lot of reasons for that. First is from pure reason, even before we have any evidence, just our a priori logic leads us to believe that the side that is the anti-status quo power, the side that wants something, is the side that's going to disrupt the situation on the ground. The side that has basically is satisfied with the status quo is not going to rock the boat. So that's like just an intellectual construct. Second, we have Aliyev's own words, the words of his own military leadership about how they will conquer Armenia, how they will militarily take Artsakh, how they will even reclaim Yerevan. So we have the logic side of it, we have the rhetoric side of it, and then we have the evidence side of it. And that's this amendment that went through, this measure that went through the intelligence bill, and more importantly, what Haig talked about, the idea of gunfire locators. That was proposed more than 5 years ago here in the U.S. Congress by bipartisan group of legislators, the Royce-Engel peace proposal, which says let's put those gunfire locators down. And as Haig said, if Azerbaijan has a case to make, if they think that they can prove that Armenia is the aggressor, well, then deploy those gunfire locators. The fact that Azerbaijan is not the party, the fact that Azerbaijan is the party obstructing that technology from being deployed in the region leads us, and I think many others, to believe that it's Azerbaijan, in fact, that's behind this aggression. So on many levels, it's clear, very clear, that Azerbaijan's the aggressor, and we need to make that that knowledge so inescapably present and clear in the minds of U.S. policymakers and policymakers around the world that will break this false parity. We've done that through legislative vehicles in Congress last year. An amendment went through supporting the Royce-Engel proposals. Right now, before Congress, is a measure that Congressman Pallone introduced, which would encourage travel, let's say. I know that European legislators frequently travel to Nagorno-Karabakh. Some Americans do as well, but there are some serious restrictions on who from America can even set foot in Artsakh, and we think that's counterproductive. We think that this conflict would only benefit from more dialogue, from more travel, from more communication. We're not afraid of that. We think U.S. State Department officials should set foot in Stepanakert, talk to the people there, then go to Baku, talk to the people there, have difficult conversations, but that's how you make progress. We're not afraid of dialogue. We're not afraid of accountability. We're not afraid of the scrutiny of the international community. It's the more that the world sees what's going on, the more they'll see that on issues of peace, on issues of democracy, on issues of regional cooperation, Armenia is on the right side of the issue. That breaking that parity, I think, is a work in progress for us, but I think we're making progress.
Can I ask, do you think the recent attacks helped, or do you think they were maybe a roadblock at all? Because you said you had quite a busy legislative agenda happening that month. Do you think it helps you at all to get some of those pieces of legislation through?
Yeah, I think the urgency of the attack created urgency and got the attention of legislators. And the more that they paid attention to the issue, the more they came down on the right side of the issue. So it was a question of circumstances. Obviously, no one wished for there to be an outbreak of violence in the region, but the net effect of it was the legislators paid more attention. When they paid more attention, they saw the equities on either side. They saw who is for accountability, who's against accountability, who's threatening nuclear destruction of nuclear power stations, who is bombing kindergartens. And when you add all this evidence up, the lazy habit, maybe the self-serving habit of just assigning equal blame to either side and calling upon all parties to refrain from violence, I think that we're seeing the end of that. We're at the beginning of the end, but we're seeing the end of that. And I think we've got to have to really double down, work very hard, constantly identify, compare and contrast between Armenia and Azerbaijan. You can check out an article in Aspedes that actually breaks down 20 different fact checks on the difference between Armenia and Azerbaijan, that it's the artificial equivalence, the false parity that puts these two countries on the same level is really just a lazy habit that we need to kick.
That's a great article by Aram, by the way. Just another thing, Aram, while we're on the topic of Azerbaijan, you've probably sort of taken the trophy in terms of being able to explain Madrid principles to people. And I know this, that could be a panel discussion on its own, but if you can, very basically explain the Madrid principles and, why you're for or against it, I think it would be a good opportunity at this time.
Thank you. Thank you, Haig. The Madrid principles, it's kind of a shorthand for the type of phased settlement that the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe is proposing to resolve, let's say, Artsakh, Azerbaijan status and security issues. And it is a phased program. Let me just make that clear at the outset. From the beginning of the Artsakh issue, the international community put forward two basic paths. One was a package settlement where everything gets decided at once, and the other is the phased settlement in which things are set. It will be resolved in a chronological fashion. The Armenian side typically prefers the package, but within the phased world, there are ways that you can have a better or worse phasing of a settlement. I don't think there could be a worse way to phase than the Madrid principles. The Madrid principles are arguably the worst possible way to phase a solution, and I'll explain. the Madrid principles basically say this, that the Armenian side, Artsakh and Armenia, need to agree to the surrender of at least 5 territories immediately. That's step number 1, 5 territories. A 6th territory soon after. That's the space between Armenia and Artsakh and toward the north. That's a very often called Kelbajat. And then another half region, which is what they call non-corridor laching, which is everything but the road that connects Artsakh and Armenia and a little bit of land on either side. That's called non-corridor laching. So it will be 5 + 1 + half, 6.5 provinces. Those go to Azerbaijan at the very, very outset of the peace plan. And you might wonder, well, what is it that Armenia gets in return for? The Armenians get in return for the surrender of sovereignty, of security, of territory, of land fought for and won against a war of aggression at the cost of thousands and thousands of lives. Well, the answer is the Armenians will get a promise. And the promise will be by Ilham Aliyev that at some point in the future, nobody knows when, some set of people, we don't know who, will decide or vote or have a referendum on what might be the status of Artsakh going forward, that part of Artsakh that I imagine would remain. So that's such a vague promise. It's such a reversible promise. It can be pulled back at any time. In fact, Aliyev pulls it back even before he has the opportunity to sign it. He has said, this is how he explains it. Okay, the Armenians will give us land and we will make this promise to them. But the promise really only means that, and these are his words and the words of his ambassador in Washington, that we will talk to the Armenians later, the Armenian community of Artsakh later, about security guarantees that the Azerbaijani and Armenian communities of the Nagorno-Karabakh region of Azerbaijan, we will talk about the security guarantees they will enjoy. So basically, he's saying, they'll be citizens of Azerbaijan, they'll be equal to the Azerbaijani community and Artsakh, and they'll have rights, which, by the way, those are the same rights that the Armenians had under the Soviet system. Those are the same rights that the Armenians of Baku or Sumgait or Girovabad or Malaga had before they were massacred. It's absolutely worthless. It's actually worse than the Armenians had under the Soviets, if you can imagine. So the Armenians of Artsakh, having been attacked, having on their historical lands, having won a war, would voluntarily give away that territory and then put their name on a piece of paper that accepts less rights, certainly than they currently have, but even less rights than they had as Soviet subjects. It is, I joke, Haig, with the negotiator, the U.S. negotiator, Andrew Schofer, like, imagine if I offered you that same deal on your house, where you have to give me your house, you give me the title to your house, and I promise you that someday I'll talk to you about the selling price, but it might be 0, and we'll work it out later. But give me the title to your home right now. And he would laugh at me, and of course he's right to laugh. But that's exactly the type of the joke of a proposition that's been put before the Armenian people. We really have to start that one over. That the Madrid principles are a non-starter, and I get worked up on this, Haig, but it's such a terrible deal. And there's so many better ways to work these things out.
Sounds like it. Yeah, and I think the entire Armenian National Committee body will not accept the Madrid principles as a starting point and middle point or end point.
Yes, but the tragedy is that Republic of Armenia also has signed the Madrid principles, and now all the procedures are going according to Madrid principles, and our task is very difficult to convince people about the package deal, because if it will not be a package deal, we will lose everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
But unfortunately, when you speak to people, they'll tell you, okay, we have the Madrid principles, we have 6 clauses
the signature
there. We can do it. And it was one of the most tragic things that Armenian government has ever done. Yeah. It was even worse than the Key West.
I do take some encouragement from the fact that during these attacks, or before these attacks and after these attacks that Azerbaijan recently conducted, they did say that Armenia is trying to change what's on the table when it comes to these negotiations. So one can only hope that that results in an actual withdrawal of that ridiculous signature. And yeah, we move on. But yeah, absolutely good point, Kaspar. Sorry.
Thank you.
The only way, the only way to withdraw Madrid principles is that we become more and more stronger and make understand Azerbaijan that they have no chance. That's what we have to do. And I think that the current Minister of Defense of Armenia is working on that direction.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you, Kaspar. Thank you, Haig, for asking that question. And thank you, Aram, for giving us such an in-depth explanation of the Madrid principles and why we are so strongly against them. So just to end our discussion today, I'd like to ask you all for a really brief update on what's currently on the table for each of your officers. I'll pass it off to Vera to start us off. You could let us know quite briefly what's been going on or what you have in the works.
All right. To start with, I would like to say that in the recent years, the committee has been able to become a reliable source of and reference for many scholars, historians, research centers, and media outlets. The committee continues its work, its usual work in organizing conferences, publishing books in Arabic. These books could be translations from foreign languages for well-known, let's say, historians and writers, helping in preparing documentary films for significant media companies. As you see, we stress on the part which has to do with communication, media, etc. And we don't have much to do on the political level in the Middle East. It also contributes to assisting doctoral and master's researchers by Arab students who come to us from different parts of the world, Arab world, of course, in search of references and documents related to the Armenian genocide, history, and Armenian presence in the region. However, we as a committee, we faced tremendous challenges in the last years, especially due to the Arab Spring and the ongoing wars in Syria and other countries, where Armenian communities had a strong presence in the region, which not only negatively affected the activities of the committee, but also threatened high tide initiatives. The Middle East, being the backbone of Armenian diaspora, today is suffering instability, economic stagnation, migration of Armenians. This migration is not only determined by domestic social or economic factors, but is considerably influenced by the events of the restless Middle East. As we said, for example, weakening the Armenian community in Lebanon or Syria or Iraq, conditioned by the ongoing war in the region, the economic instability, the Turkish influence, is a challenge not only to the Armenian communities of the region, but also to the Armenian diaspora and the Armenians in general. The Syrian Armenian community is not only a historic and organized community, it is the derzor, the witness for the historical fact of the genocide, weakening and shrinking the Syrian Armenian community, and before that shrinking the Armenian community of Iraq, Iran, or Egypt will considerably affect our activities of high tide in the region. So under such conditions, it is more than obvious that we as Armenians cannot stay indifferent to the fate of our compatriots in Syria or Iraq or Jordan or Iran or even Egypt. And today Lebanon is in the same situation. So I'm sure that the communities of the diaspora will not stay indifferent towards our community in Lebanon, so that we stay strong and continue our job or our job as high tide committees. So, what I want to conclude that we as High Tide Committee should call for Armenian communities of Lebanon, Syria, Iran, and elsewhere to stay strong and keep playing a key role as managing centers of the Armenians, especially in the Middle East.
Thank you, Vera. I'll pass it on to Sevag now.
Yes, thanks, Olivia. I think it's safe to say that front and center right now is Lebanon. getting that aid into Lebanon, doing the fundraisers, and then the political legwork behind the scenes for whatever may come moving forward on that agenda. But at the same time, there are a number of other issues that were in the short term that we're focusing on. The centennial of the Treaty of Sevres is, of course, one of them. We have a number of educational items that we will be posting soon on that, and we're going to be working with the ANCA Eastern region on organizing a few panel discussions on this, and a number of other both political and educational initiatives for the centennial of Sevres. Of course, Artsakh is always a priority, number one priority. And considering what happened last month, I think we really have to amplify our voices in terms of advocating for gunfire locators, for increased and enhanced confidence building measures, and ensuring our government weighs in on that globally and has a say and plays a pivotal role in ensuring that lasting peace hopefully could be achieved in the region, while at the same time upholding the inalienable rights of the Armenian people. But another big agenda in Canada, and I'm sure you guys have come across this over the last few months, is the issue of arms sales to Azerbaijan and Turkey. As you know, last year in October, following Turkey's invasion of northern Syria, Canada banned all arms sales to Turkey, and that's something that we worked on. We worked on tirelessly with different partner organizations as well, and that's something that is continuing to this day. But we want to make sure that moving forward, that doesn't change. Likewise with Azerbaijan, although it's not banned, but for the last couple of years, Canada hasn't been selling weapons to Azerbaijan, and of course we'd like to keep it that way, and we're working around the clock for that one as well. COVID-19 aid to Armenia, that's something ongoing. We're in active discussions on that front as well, and hopefully we can get it somewhere within the next few weeks. And at the same time, we're doing a lot of work. We're kind of sort of taking advantage of the lockdown and COVID-19, if that's a good way of putting it, to strengthen our community outreach efforts, and keep our grassroots as engaged as always.
Thank you, Sevag. I'll pass it on to Kaspar now.
Yes, thank you. The COVID-19 has obliged us to change many things in our programs. We had planned that beginning of April, we were going to have a very big exhibition of the last decade Armenia's progress in IT. And we were hoping that it would be very interesting for European people. Unfortunately, we had to postpone it. Now it will go for 2021. Another important program that we had to postpone, Aram knows about it, and maybe Sevag also. We have interns from Armenia and Nagorno-Karabakh. They come to our office, they stay with us 3 months. Around 2 months, 1.5, 2 months, they are in our office, and then they work with members of the European Parliament, of members of Parliament, so that they have experience of what is Europe. And I'll give you an example. We had from Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Artsakh already 2 people. Now in April, we're supposed to have the 3rd one, but unfortunately, we could not have them because of the COVID. Now we hope that from 2021, if everything goes well, we'll continue to have this program. We already had had around 15 or 16 young people from Armenia and around 12 young people from Artsakh who followed this program. On July 22nd, we had a big webinar Zoom conference with 28 participants of our various Haitat committees in Europe, during which Giro Manoyan, you know all who is Giro Manoyan, presented the case of Sevr. If Sevr can be said that today we can follow the Sevr. There also we had to speak for half an hour regarding Tavush also, because it was at the same day, so that we can coordinate all over Europe our work. It was very interesting. Giro had prepared slides about it, and we already have sent to all our committees, and it's very interesting for us. Regarding Sevr, we had a Facebook frame. We posted 2 posters yesterday regarding Sevr, and there was also an interview from me regarding the importance of Sevr. But all over the year, until the end of 2020, we'll continue our work regarding Sevr and Woodrow Wilson arbitrage. This is what is important for Sevr. Another important program that we have, and again it will depend from COVID, it's the breaking of isolation of Artsakh from Azerbaijan and Turkey. We were successful. Our executive director, a brilliant young lady, Aram Nosser Vinyan, has organized very well. And every year we had many people going to Artsakh from Europe, many politicians, and in the other side, Artsakh president, he came 3 times to Brussels, president of the parliament, parliamentarians, ministers of foreign affairs, minister of agriculture, because Herine is working also not only for the political help to Artsakh, but also for economic. So we had a meeting with the Belgian Minister of Agriculture to find out how they can help Artsakh. We have found now the way to do it, but we have to wait to see the situation. We are working also, and we are preparing new documents about the tourism in Artsakh to encourage it, to have meetings with tour operators to organize, but unfortunately, Saturday came before Friday, so everything now it's on the air. I cannot tell anything concrete because I cannot also, I am not sure how I can go back to Brussels. That's a problem too. I don't know when Harut can come to Brussels. Luckily, Herine and Dashen are in Brussels and they can handle, and I imagine how hard it is for them to be alone there and to just talking with us by phone or by Skype conference. But if things go better, most probably we'll have 2 or 3 new ANC committees in Europe. The name, all they haven't all the name the ANC. There are EAFJDs in Germany and Austria, CDCA in the French-speaking countries. But anyhow, we'll have Haitat committees, 2 or 3 more new Haitat committees in Europe, if we can travel and have our contacts there.
Thank you,
course,
Kaspar.
we are waiting also to have 2 more friendship groups, probably one in Greece. We'll have one in Greece with Artsakh, and probably in another country that I would not like now to say it.
Thank you very much, Kaspar, for giving us the update. And I'm very sorry that you're stuck in Greece at the moment and can't make your way back to Brussels.
Thank you.
I'd like to pass it to Aram, please.
Sure. Just again, just want to share how much, our hearts are with our community in Lebanon. All the violence and all the unrest that we've seen has been obviously come at a huge cost for our communities in the Middle East. It also comes, as Vera said, at a cost to our diaspora, because a wound suffered by the Armenians of Beirut or in Haleb or anywhere, we feel that pain. There's a cascading of the cost of those disruptions. They cascade throughout our diaspora and also through the region. Everywhere that we've seen historically over the past century, Armenians pushed out of, those places have suffered, whether that's the Ottoman Empire or Azerbaijan or Iraq or Egypt or wherever. So that's number one. Number two, we're continuing our legislative priorities. One that we didn't expect that we're dealing with right now is why our Library of Congress, after the Congress recognized the Armenian genocide, still doesn't use the phrase Armenian genocide. It seems like they're more like the Library of the State Department than the Library of Congress. So we're trying to figure that one out. It's Congressman Schiff called it bizarre that even after Congress recognized this crime, the Library of Congress won't. So we're dealing with that. We were happy to have our first ever virtual internship, and we were worried about how it would work out. Sipan and our team, Sipan Ohanessian here who runs our programs, youth programs, he did a great job. And we think that virtual can be part of our future. We obviously look forward to welcoming people back to the city as soon as that's safe. But our summer internships and our Capital Gateway program, which helps young people find jobs in Washington, we're kind of getting our feet under ourselves and learning how to do all that virtually. And let me just close by saying that very often you hear about the work that's going on in Washington and the work that the ANC is doing in our nation's capital. But it's all the result of tremendous grassroots organizing and community outreach and coalition building in the eastern and western U.S., where we have, in ANC Eastern region, Tamar helps run that out of Louisiana. It's everything east of the Mississippi, and Armin and his team run the ANC in the western region. Armin Sarkisian run the ANC in the western region, everything west of the Mississippi, and it's because they do such incredible work and organize our community so effectively that we're able to have a voice in Washington.
Thank you, Aram. And finally, I'll pass it to Haig. Can you let us know what Haidtad Down Under has got on their plate?
Yeah, couple of things I'll target. I mean, I won't, whatever's been said, I think there's a lot of synergies obvious, and I'm glad there are a lot of synergies between what all of us are working on. A few things I'll highlight. Number one, earlier this year, just before COVID sent us all to our homes, we were able to launch what we called the Joint Justice Initiative, along with the Assyrian and Greek communities. And with Australia being the only country that we're speaking from now that doesn't have a federal legislative body that has recognized the Armenian genocide, we decided that this might be the pathway to get that done. We have tremendous partners in the Assyrian and the Greek communities, and together our numbers even represent a lot more than any of us individually would represent. Our influence in the hallways of Parliament has increased, although those hallways have been desolate since the launch. What we have done is we've taken our battle to digital, and we invited all those parliamentarians who attended our launch in Parliament, the Joint Justice Initiative signing of the Memorandum of Understanding, to sign affirmations of support, digital affirmations of support with their digital signatures to declare their solidarity with the cause. And we so far have 34 legislators that have signed on to that, over 20% of the nation's senators, and slightly less than that percentage-wise in the lower house have already signed that. We're working on building this up to a level that we can take it to the Foreign Affairs Ministry and the Australian government and say, listen, you guys have a lot in common with Turkey, but you don't have much in common with the people that elect you. And when the elected representatives, just like happened in the Congress and the Senate late last year, which was a heroic result from Aram and his team, and the grassroots. Of course, we take a lot of inspiration from you guys over there. You know, it's just ridiculous for an administration after the Congress and the Senate recognizes the genocide to not use the G word, and it becomes an inevitability rather than anything else. We're trying to make that happen with the Joint Justice Initiative in Australia, and the initial strides are vast. We're also going down the digital path to increase the number of signatories we have to the Australian Friends of Artsakh network. The Australian Friends of Artsakh network does include a lot of politicians, but it also includes a lot of prominent Australians outside of politics, people in the media, people in academia, even sort of television personalities, radio personalities, things like that, with the goal being that if you know this person, which they're all very recognizable faces in Australia, and that person supports the rights to self-determination of the Republic of Artsakh, and that Artsakh is Armenian and will always be Armenian, then you're more likely to take notice of this issue. And if you hear them speak about this issue, it will be even more exposure for what we're trying to do is initially, as we all said, raise awareness for the rights of the Armenians over there. So I think that that's also been very encouraging. I think we've had we're up to around 60 Friends of Artsakh in Australia. And out of that, I think the most recent addition to that signature list is Joe Hockey, who was the former treasurer, which is like the number 2 in Australia's political system, and was most recently neighbours with Aram in Washington, DC, as Australia's ambassador to the United States. Now that he's not working for the foreign ministry and he has an Armenian background, he has seen it fit to join the Australian Friends of Artsakh, and we appreciate his profile very much. So we're obviously working on that as well. The final thing is that I'll highlight is we are running at this stage anyway, we are running in November our Youth Advocates Program, which is part of our greater sort of internship offerings to community youth, like all the ANCs do around the world. And we've already got, I think, about 15 to 20 youth signed up to it. While one state at the moment, Victoria, looks like they're going to find it hard to travel anywhere outside of their driveway, to be honest. The rest of the country is starting to move, and we're hopeful that by November that will happen. We also have a pending invitation to Caroline Cox to address the Australian parliamentarians in the Australian Parliament in November. Whether she'll be allowed to escape from London and end up in Sydney is another matter. And if she does, well, that will also happen, which will be great for Artsakh and Artsakh's exposure over here.
Thank you, Haig, for wrapping that up for us. And I thank you all for joining me today for this episode of Australia Live by Armenia TV. It was a highly informative discussion, and I'm immensely proud of everything that the Armenian National Committee officers are accomplishing worldwide. Vera, our thoughts and prayers are with you and the rest of the community in Lebanon as we all pledge to help you rebuild by contributing to the several fundraisers that have been launched in our respective communities, because it's our turn now to give back to Lebanon. Thank you for participating.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you all for participating. And from Olivia Dilanchian and the Australia Live by Armenia TV, we wish you a good night, a good morning, and a good afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you.